So, let's get back to this comparison between Gatsby and Blanche, because I think understanding this comparison between Blanche Dubois of A Streetcar Named Desire and Gatsby will help us understand something important about Gatsby. Alright, so if we, using this analogy, right, that Shakespeare is to his plays as Gatsby is to his parties, we can think about the parties, in fact, we can think about Gatsby's life as a kind of theater, as a kind of play, as a kind of tragedy, right? And in every tragedy, there is a main character that has a tragic flaw. Like Oedipus, like Medea, like Macbeth, right? Like Hamlet. So if we look at this as a sort of tragedy about Gatsby, what is Gatsby's tragic flaw?
His desire.
His desire. Okay. How so? How is that his tragic flaw? Remember, because I'm always going to ask you to be able to back up what you say. So you have to...
It's because his desire for Daisy that caused him to pretend he's from the top of the hierarchy, and his desire for Daisy to admit that he committed the crime that he didn't.
Okay. So yeah, he sacrifices himself for Daisy's sake. Does she care?
No.
No, she doesn't care. Alright, so yeah, this is part of Gatsby's undoing, but think about this. When did Gatsby first meet Daisy? When did Gatsby first meet Daisy? Was she married to Tom Buchanan when Gatsby first met Daisy?
No.
No, right? She was single, right? He met her in Louisville, Kentucky, 5 years previous, right? 5 years previous. So he initially meets Daisy some 5 years previous. This is important. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you another way of looking at it to understand his tragic flaw. And it's going to require us to listen to two passages I'm going to read to you. These are both passages in which Nick Carraway is describing Daisy's voice. I just want you to listen to these passages, okay? And once you listen to these passages, I'm going to describe to you what they mean, right? And then we're going to apply that to this fact that Gatsby first met Daisy 5 years previous. All right? So now this is Nick Carraway describing Daisy's voice when he first meets her at Tom's again. He says, describing Daisy's voice, "It was the kind of voice that the ear follows up and down, as if each speech is an arrangement of notes that will never be played again." All right? An arrangement of notes never played again. Okay, now we're going to get another description of Daisy's voice, again by Nick Carraway. So this isn't an accident on the part of Fitzgerald. He's trying to do something, right? He's giving us a context in which to interpret this flaw, or in which to discover what this tragic flaw of Gatsby's is. Alright, so this is Nick Carraway, again describing Daisy's voice later on. He says, "Daisy began to sing with the music in a husky, rhythmic whisper, bringing out a meaning in each word that it had never had before and would never have again." Right? So a meaning that it had never had before and would never have again. So never before, never again. So, an arrangement of notes, never played again, a sort of expression or a meaning to words that they never had before and would never have again. What is Nick comparing Daisy's voice to? Well, he's comparing Daisy's voice to, jazz improvisation. Jazz improvisation is something that only takes place once. The arrangement of notes are never repeated again. Whenever a musician plays an improvisation in a song, those notes are never repeated that way ever again. Even if he plays the same song, his solo is going to be entirely different from his previous interpretation of the solo. Right? So, these are the rules of sort of jazz improvisation. Now, I'm going to make the argument that what Gatsby's doing, see, Fitzgerald has given us this context. He said, well, these are the rules of jazz improvisation, right? It's an arrangement of notes that are never repeated twice. That is the definition, right? What does Gatsby try to do? He tries to break the rules of jazz improvisation. The rules of jazz improvisation say that you can't repeat the notes, right? The notes are only expressed that way once, and they never get expressed that way ever again. But that's the rule that Gatsby tries to break. And it's like Blanche. Right? Blanche has the obsession with young men because Alan, her young husband, died. Right? And she's constantly trying to recapture the loss of her young dead husband. So that's why she's constantly attracted to these young men. Her high school student, and then the paper boy, right? She's trying to recreate the past. But, can you recreate the past? No. And Gatsby is doing the same thing. He's trying, now that he has money, right, the very thing that he lacked, the thing that he thought was essential to acquiring Daisy 5 years previous when she was single and available, now that he has that money, he wants to go back. He wants to recreate the past. He wants to go back. But he can't. And this is what Nick says to him. So describing the situation that Gatsby's gotten himself into, Nick makes the following statement. He wanted nothing less of Daisy than that she should go to Tom and say, "I never loved you." After she had obliterated 4 years with that sentence, they could decide upon the more practical measures to be taken. One of them was that after she was free, they were to go back to Louisville and be married from our house, just as if it were 5 years ago. Right? He wants to recreate the past. But then this is what Nick says. You can't repeat the past. You can't repeat the past, he cried incredulously. Why, of course you can. He looked around him wildly as if the past were lurking here in the shadow of his house, just out of reach of his hand. I'm going to fix everything just the way it was before, he said, nodding determinedly. She'll see. Right? So he's driven by this impulse to recreate the past, to repeat the past, to break this rule of jazz improvisation. But we see that Blanche can't do this. She can't repeat the past. And neither can Gatsby. That's his tragic flaw. He's trying to do what's impossible.